Hello, I am Digital Illustrator Mike Meth, and so this is the second one of these Q&A mini videos to address some of the frequently asked questions about my workflow, how it is I do what I do, etc. So I've been getting some questions about how I set up my portraits specifically. As far as what are the stages that I have, what are the different steps I take to get from the initial sketch to the finished product. And one of my friends, Jeff Bear, so he commented that he wanted to see how I approach a portrait, because I think I previously posted a video for a workflow I used to use that I don't really use anymore. When I used to do portraits, I used to frequently use the Loomis method of construction. And what I mean by that is I used to draw, I used to construct the head with basic shapes. Let's pretend that that's a circle. So for example, you'd have this sphere shape for the main part of the skull. You would bisect that for the eye line, and then at the base of this circle, which is the side plane of the head, that's where the nose would go. And then so you got 1/3, 2/3, 3/3 for the base of the chin and the jaw. And I would basically construct the head this way, and I would use this line to construct the brow ridge, the eye sockets, ears, neck, and I would build that way. When I'm creating figures without reference, I still do construct this way. However, now when I'm doing portraits from reference, it's much more about measurement, using points of reference and plumb lines. What I mean by plumb lines, it's usually finding one point. So for example, let's see, to find that maybe this part of the ear lines up with this part of the blazer, or maybe this corner of the the tear duct lines up at this point between these two teeth, and this part lines up with this part of the nose. This piece, the inside of the tear duct, lines up with the corner of the nose, etc., etc. So to use those particular points of reference when I'm doing my initial drawing, so specifically, what are the steps? So I start off with the underdrawing like this, and this is an older portrait. Now that I look at it, like any other artist, I'm obsessing over everything that's wrong with it. But anyway, so this is the first step. This is the underdrawing. Where it's really the most important step. I think I see a bunch of videos. I don't remember whether I said this in the last one or if I said it in a video that I subsequently deleted. But I see a lot of video tutorials for how to draw figures or how to draw portraits, and they will start off, step number 1 is they already have this perfect, flawless, completely clean underdrawing. It's like just a contour. There's no construction lines, no nothing. It's just a perfectly clean black and white line art drawing. And what's wrong with that is that it doesn't cover any of the the steps that got you there. That the underdrawing, the initial measurements, that's the most important of constructing any portrait. Because it doesn't matter how good your rendering skills are, it doesn't matter how good your painting is. If the initial drawing is off, if the measurements are off, it's like, putting icing and making this amazing cake where the foundation is, completely wobbly, so the whole thing's going to topple. If the foundation and the measurements are off, if the drawing is off, it doesn't matter how good the painting looks, the whole thing is, it's not structurally sound. So this is the step that I take my most time on with the initial construction. And I usually like to put down a mid-tone in the background and then do my measurements on top of that. And then the next step, I'm going to try and hurry this along here, is the monochromatic underpainting. Okay? And what I mean by that is I'll start to block in some of the midtones and shadows. You'll notice that I don't really put in any highlights. Where I am going to have highlights, I'll just leave negative space. And the reason why I don't put in highlights at this point is when I get to the later stages, I'm going to go in and put those highlights in with color. I want to make sure that there's color in all my highlights. So I'll just leave a relatively uncomplicated monochromatic underpainting. The next step is I'll go in with a basic color overlay. It's kind of like a traditional glazing technique. And I'll use, usually when I do this, I'll use an overlay blending mode. I'll go more specifically into this probably later. Well, this is really just a really brief glimpse into what I teach in my digital portraiture class, which, that's a much slower paced. It's a 10-week master course on how to go from step to step to step. But this is, just a glimpse in how I set these things up. So this is the next step. Blocking in basic colors as a glaze. And then the next step after that is starting to, and this is kind of a big jump, I know, is starting to block in with opaque colors. So, I start off just blocking in the glazes, the general colors, and then I'll go in with opaque colors and start blocking in more accurate colors. I'll start putting in colored highlights. I'll start adding color to my shadows. And then the final steps are, adding more and more accurate colors, and then obviously the detail stage. Putting in the little hairs here, the little hairs in the eyebrows and the eyelashes, the little specular highlights and things, wrinkles and details. And I know that that's a big pitfall for artists and myself specifically, is that there's this desire to go straight in for the details. And you really need to force yourself to slow down. Me, specifically, I definitely suffer from that, where I'll be painting and I actively have to say to myself, stop and slow down. And by doing that, it really forces you to keep an eye on the overall picture instead of honing in on little spots. Because if you're just focusing on the details, usually the structure overall is going to end up off. And just looking at this now, I can tell that there are a bunch of inaccuracies, things that are off. But for the most part, I'm pretty pleased with how this one came together. And then obviously my little signature as the last stage. But yeah, that's basically, those are the different steps. You can see it in this one too. This is my most recent. And again, I'm constantly trying to get better at my initial measurements in underdrawing. Here was the reference. Because that is the most important step. And there are a decent amount of inaccuracies in this drawing, which I went on later to fix. So this is the underdrawing, the monochromatic underpainting, blocking in the basic colors. This is super simplistic. If I'm teaching, I might go a little more specific, a little more accurate at this stage. For the first time you're doing this, it definitely pays to take a little more time on the overlay. But anyway, so I'll go from this step to blocking in the accurate colors, and then the detail. And you see, at this stage, there were some inaccuracies that I fixed, and that's fine, but I would definitely advocate taking the time to handle that in the underdrawing stage, just so you don't have to deal with it later. Another thing I did, as you can see, compared to the reference, is I wanted to make sure that I had a lot more color in it. It's great to have reference. It's great to be accurate with regards to the reference, but I I don't want to be a slave to the reference. I don't want to recreate perfectly the reference, because what's the point? So I like to maybe change the colors. The last one I did here, this one was pretty close to the actual reference. This one I took some more liberties with the reds. I added, a little more blues in the highlights here. And my brushwork, I really like to, now in my later pieces, to get a little sketchier with the brushwork. So even though it reads as realistic, when you get in close, you can see my hand in all of it. You can see the little details that I put in the highlights and the shadows, and just I think that it gives it a lot of charm to be able to see some of that brushwork in it. So that's basically how I get from start to finish. Yeah. So in the next couple of videos, I've got some more questions that I'm going to be answering. I hope that this was helpful. Like I said, for more specifics, for a much more robust experience, check out MikeMethEducation.com, where I offer 10-week classes. Specifically, I offer a 10-week digital portraiture class, where I give my students an opportunity to really put put these lectures, to put these principles into practice by working on your own underdrawing, your own monochromatic underpainting, the color glaze, block-in, overlay stage, and then putting in opaque colors, and then the details. So it's really a great opportunity to try it yourself and work with me. But anyway, that's what I got for this one. I will probably be recording another video later today. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for asking questions. Keep asking questions, because I love to do these little teasers for you to give you a taste of what I offer with my classes. So thank you again, and I will see you next time.